Hello, thank you for tuning in to JKEV. I'm Joe, and we have a special guest this week.
That's very kind of you. I've never been called special. Well, I have, but in a window-licking kind of way. I'll be a regular EV dad. John, pleased to meet you.
So we're glad to do these collaboration videos. We're gonna have, I think, about 8 of them total, maybe more. See, depends how they go. And we're just gonna go through today talking about how we've planned our road trips. I just came back from a 4,500-mile cross-country road trip, and regular EV dad here just came back from a 6,500 true cross-country road trip.
Yeah, and hey, if you want to see the first one of these where we just talk about why we bought the Volkswagen, then one of us will make this work. So you should just click somewhere and you can see the first version of this wherever it ends up.
We'll also have regular EV Dad's link down in the description. Be sure to check out his channel and subscribe. And our icon to subscribe is right down here in the corner.
So now, if I'm editing this, I'll have to make sure it goes there. That's you've created a it now. That's absolutely fine.
On my screen, it looks like I'm in the corner. So.
Learning so much about this tube thing.
Yeah.
You know, in case you haven't watched the first one, so the way we virtually met was kind of weird and unique to the electrical vehicle scene, because we essentially met on PlugShare. This was
it's the Foursquare of electric vehicles,
right? Yeah.
Or the Yelp, would you say?
and so I was tracking, and we'll talk about let's agree right now. We'll talk about this in more depth, the dependability of Electrify America chargers in the future. But I was tracking them through PlugShare. So I had alerts to tell me when somebody successfully checked in and successfully charged. And we literally kind of crossed each other somewhere in Nevada, I think, is where ultimately it happened. And we saw each other checking in where the other was on their way to or had just come from it. Kind of unique, but you know, charging is only part of the experience. So we talked in the last video about, you know, how you got used to the vehicle and testing. So had you already decided you were going to drive? So Chicago to Las Vegas, correct?
Yep, Chicago to Las Vegas, then up to Lake Tahoe and back home. Yeah, it was quite an experience,
and so
to say the least.
I agree with you. I did that journey myself, just without the Vegas bit, and then some. Had you already decided you were doing the road trip before you bought the vehicle, or how did it come together?
We typically do 2 to 3 road trips a year. We like to do camping and some other things that flying usually doesn't accommodate for us. So going to buy this vehicle, that was kind of a big part, is that the 3 years of free charging with Electrify America was a very large incentive for us to make the plunge.
Interesting. And so you've got the vehicle, you've done your testing. We touched on it briefly. You introduced yourself you found out about a better route planner. Were you using that with your hybrid, or was this a whole new thing for you?
It's something I had known about in the past, just from watching other Tesla users have experience with it. So I knew of it as being fairly reliable. So I just kind of used it to do a rough plan for the trip, see how many stops I would have, roughly how much time I'd be spending charging, just to even see if it was feasible to add that much travel time to the destinations. And it looked like it would work, so we took the plunge. How about you? How did you hear about a better route planner?
I honestly don't know. And I've been racking my brain about this. It's a great question. A year ago, back in June of last year, I had been planning to buy a secondhand Model S. That was actually my first choice of vehicle after when the Model Y was just going to be too expensive. The Model 3 doesn't have enough room, and most of my driving is, you know, between San Francisco. I can do a couple 100 miles in a day, a couple of times a month. If I'm touring as a comedian, you know, a comic act, and I don't have to be somewhere in 20 minutes. I can take my time, and that was part of my value prop. But my wife had a pregnant dog. If you see my channel, if you watch the videos, you'll see there's a lot of videos, and there'll be another one coming out in a few weeks' time where I have to take a dog to the other side of California, either because it's pregnant or to get it pregnant. That seems to be a weird part of my life. And in this situation, because of COVID, there was a dog that was going to give birth in 10 days. And it was in, ironically, Chicago, or in the Chicago area. And we were in full lockdown. I was able to get the dog partway back to Cheyenne, Wyoming. And I didn't have a code. I couldn't have anybody drive with me. We were, it was those really dark days of COVID. And at some point, while trying to, I found the Tesla planning software didn't work, and some more Googling brought me to a better route planner, I think. And I have to say, I was slightly addicted. I now start looking at a better route planner to think, I wonder if I could go there, as opposed to oh, you've had this experience as well.
Guilty. I'm planning trips that aren't even on my calendar yet.
Right. My wife went to a dog show in Lewiston, Washington, which is like, go up to Seattle, turn right, and then go back sometime into the 1700s. It's just there. And it's like, you must use a Tesla destination charger to make the gap. Interesting. Like that's a reason to do it. But I gotta say, I love a better route planner. Apart from it is mildly addictive planning these things out. Hey, let me ask you a question. So you're familiar with Kyle Connor at Outer Specs. Your road trip, were you enjoying the scenery, or were you what does he call it, ripping and charging? Were you doing it like coming in at 1% and charging to the exact thing and then leaving for the next place? What was your traveling style?
So one flaw with the Volkswagen onboard navigation is it does not seem to accommodate for elevation changes. So there was some charges that I got to lower than I was comfortable with, and other chargers I got to that I had arrived at 20%, and I wasn't sure what I did wrong. And no realm of speed could have burnt that off.
I'd love to get your opinion on this, but I am going to volunteer mine somewhat aggressively. The Volkswagen ID4 navigation system. I would like to think of it as a Dyson vacuum cleaner in an exotic massage parlor. It sucks balls and nothing else.
It is quite terrible.
Oh my God, it's beyond terrible. I mean, that's the nicest thing anyone's ever said about it.
The worst part is the data is provided by Garmin, which I would think would have a reputation for maybe figuring this out, but
not for much longer.
Yeah.
No, I mean, it just absolutely horrendous. It has no idea. Well, if it has I'm not sure how to. I think it has an idea of terrain, but it doesn't have the level of terrain data that PlugShare's got in it. Not even close. And it can't travel that far. If I was to go outside the car and say, take me to Reno, it'd be like, what? Sure, but you'll have to work out the charging for yourself. It doesn't have any, it's generations behind Tesla with that intuitive, go here, then go, charge for this long, and then it seems to be generations behind that.
Yep, I felt like I'm back in the early 2000s on MapQuest, printing out a trip from a better route planner.
MapQuest.
So I can,
that is, when I'm doing sales training, I joke to my new hires about MapQuest, and also the Hertz Never Lost, if you remember that thing.
Yeah.
Nothing says premium like a sat-nav system bolted to the passenger seat rail on a metallic stick. I'm not sure how those got through NTSC safety testing, but whatever. Yeah, it's a. And did you try to get a better? I mean, so you you can learn about my setup. I'll do a link to it. You know, I have a Bluetooth dongle. I have an app called EV Notify, which talks to a better route planner. So I'm getting real-time state of charge and charging information and usage. So it's to be you were doing this the old school way. You planned this out and then saved it or printed it, so you knew you had a strategy, and then you just used the inbuilt system.
Yeah, the goal was to try to use the inbuilt system and see how it fared on a trip, because the first trip we had done wasn't far enough to really have any sort of a number of charges to show whether it was good or not. And so the better route planner that we printed out was kind of like a fail safe of like, okay, we know when we get to this charger, we need to have at least this % before we leave. Okay, now what does the car think will happen?
You're kind of there. I'll go back to we used to use, I was using MapQuest 20 odd years ago when I was on the road, and I was limited to basically 2 appointments per day because that was the amount of directions I could carry with me to get from one place to another, and then from there to another in a completely. The idea of sat nav on a mobile phone was an alien concept at the time. That's how old I am, kids. I'm fat. It fills in the wrinkles. Jennifer Aniston was lying to you. You don't put avocado cream on your skin. You eat them with guacamole and burritos. That's how you get young looking skin. You're generous. I considered the Volkswagen system to be useless. You said you had a couple of charging trips. I'm like, I'm not trusting that thing to get me to Safeway 2 miles down the road. I mean, that thing. Yeah.
On top of that, there were many times where if we punched in an address, like for the Electrify America charger, that didn't exist.
It doesn't. It's not
Walmart was the reliable charging spot, because if it was at a Walmart, I knew the Walmart was going to be in the sat nav.
It is. There is a lot of work to do on not just the interface and the lagginess and yada, all the things, but yeah, the lack of data in there is just, and sometimes I love the fact that I gave it a chance, but it kept insisting that I wanted to charge at a 50 kilowatt charge point in the middle of friggin' nowhere, as opposed to the 125 kilowatt charger that was 20 miles away with 40 miles left on the clock. I mean, it just,
the car seemed very unhappy arriving with less than 10%. Anytime I noticed I was going to arrive with less than 10%, it was pretty much telling me you won't make your destination and there's no chargers available, so good luck.
Well, now here's the thing. So I'm not supporting it in any way whatsoever, but I did brake, and this will go up on a video I'm actually posting today. It's literally in the queue just for editing. It's uploaded. I just need to put the timestamps in it. I nearly ran out of juice going through Nebraska, and I broke a better route planner in real time and EV Notify and the car, because the car couldn't work out how I was able to achieve 70 miles an hour and I'm being serious, achieve efficiency of 3.3 miles per kilowatt hour. It couldn't wrap its head around that. But then the car didn't seem to be aware that I was only 60 feet behind, if not closer, to the semi that I was drafting, so that I didn't run out. Anyway, there'll be a link to that here, and it's kind of amusing. And yeah, I screwed up, and that's how we recovered without slowing down. I don't recommend it. So you planned out your route. I'm guessing most of this would have been on 80.
Yeah, and then what is dropped down to, is it 74 through Colorado? Because there's no chargers in Wyoming.
Well, let's be clear. Now, I said this before, my family's from Wyoming, and my Uncle Gene would tell you that coal is a renewable source of energy. You just have to be patient. Hi, Gene. Yeah, so you had to do is it 74 or 70? I forget. So you went through Vale and into, I'm trying to just bring up the map here because how
Green
did you,
River, Utah, then through,
up to, oh, then you went up to St. George's, I guess, and up to Vegas that way.
right. Yep. Correct.
That is, I've done the bit between Salt Lake and Green River, and then obviously to Denver, and it was a beautiful drive. How did you find it going? You kept going. You went through St. George and down to Vegas through Mesquite. How did you find that?
I definitely miscalculated.
Oh,
So when we were leaving we had an overnight, so we had a hotel in, I think it's called Cedar City, Utah. Does that sound right? I think that's one of the towns right there. And
okay.
we left there, and we thought we were going to have to go charge at St. George, but the downhill that, of course, the in-car navigation was completely unaware of, had us arriving in Mesquite with like 20% to spare without even charging at all. So that was a stretch we were definitely impressed with. Similar, we were impressed with the stretch from Vegas into Death Valley, but getting out of Death Valley was a whole nother stressful situation.
I saw your video on that. Yeah, that was yeah. If you think about it, it's kind of amazing that we can even take a vehicle like this into that environment. Whether we should or not is a very different question. It's a I hate to be horrible. We had somebody rent our RV a couple of years ago, and we explained to them that, and by the way, if you're not familiar, because not everyone lives here in America and on the West Coast, Death Valley is literally the hottest place on Earth. It has I think it's the lowest solid point on Earth, the lowest piece of land, I think it is.
It's the lowest that people live in, because I think there's a place that in the Sahara that gets warmer, but nobody in their right mind lives there. But for some reason, people do live in Death Valley.
So you have to understand, like, the towns in the area have names like Furnace Creek. I mean, they're not messing around here. We had these people.
One of the sites we went to was called the Devil's Golf Course.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. And I've been there myself, not with an EV. And I went in, winter. We had somebody rent our RV, and we explained to them that you can only reduce the AC will only reduce the temperature by 20%, by 20 Fahrenheit. And they complained that their food spoiled. And we're like, I'm surprised you didn't. It is not a hospitable environment, but a beautiful drive. And you talk about the efficiency. And Kyle from Outspec did the same thing, and he said, yeah, basically from Green River down to St. George, it's downhill. A great situation. So you were in Vegas for a couple of days, and then you headed up to, do you say Tahoe?
Yep. We went through Death Valley then to get up to Tahoe.
So you went through the new chargers on 95 that they put in. They call them the recreational chargers.
We didn't go through. We went through a couple of them. The ones on, are you referring to the ones in Bishop and north of that, kind of by Yosemite?
I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to refer people to the News Coolum review channel. I only know about them from seeing them on his channel.
The route we took, we went from Vegas into Death Valley, then back out eastward and back into Nevada to a mining town called Beatty, Nevada. Encountered a very slow charge point charger there. And then from there, we were able to go north and then west across the Sierras to get to Bishop, California. And from there, we were back on Electrify America chargers for the rest of the way to Tahoe.
I'm looking at my, as you're saying this, I'm looking at the Electrify America map, because there are a few gaps in it. You only have Oh, yeah, I think you missed one. I think, yeah, you've got the one by the Sequoia Forest, but yeah, no, those aren't places that you want to run out of juice, are they?
No,
No.
that's why I was calculating. I thought there was a chance we could go from Vegas into Death Valley and then back out on the California side, but a better route planner suggested that we go back to Nevada to charge, and I think we're thankful we did too.
That sounds like. And so you went to Tahoe, beautiful part of the world. I'm blessed to live relatively near there. And then once you'd finished in Tahoe, was that then you what I call cannonball? You ripped and charged back home, or you took a?
Yeah, pretty much just charger hop. So just for those who don't know, charger hopping is you just arrive at a charger, charge only what you need to get to the next charger. So a lot of people might ask, why wouldn't you just charge to 80% or 90% and skip the next one? Well, the problem is the car charges twice as fast. So say it's 20 minutes to get from 10% to 45%. It's another 40 minutes to get from 45% to 90%. So it's really useful to use that lower end of the battery where you can just quick 10, 15-minute stops all across the country.
Yeah, I'm just as you're saying this, I'm looking at I pulled all the data out. I have a video I'm planning on producing on what would the costs have been for this trip. I went and emptied all the charging information out of the Electrify America app. And yeah, I mean, just to give everybody a better example, our cars can do, and I say it's 250 miles. That's at 70 miles an hour with the air conditioning on and a full load. That's a realistic. Drive faster, you don't go as far. You drive slower, go further. That's the realistic numbers. But the charging time is, it's critical. In I look at these ones where I came in at 3%, I would charge to 70%, which is 200 miles of range. That's 2.5 hours of driving in 30 minutes dead. Whereas if I do I did some long, deep charges from 30 to 92 because I'm arriving later in the pack, it won't charge as quickly. 30 to 92 took 40 minutes. And these are, so being bold is good for you. Coming in at 1% means, and I called it the fat charge. So between 0 and 40%. You get the full beans, 120, on average, 126, 129 kilowatt hours. And then it tapers off from there. We did a lot of, 2 to 45 charges because of the time. And we talked about this, I think, briefly, quite often, what a better route planner, which is very accurate, you're actually performed quicker than that.
I actually, agree. I encountered the same thing where numerous times tried to get me to skip chargers. I'm not sure why, because I definitely know I was beating their times consistently. I know there's some settings you can mess with to try to get it to send you to more. I had all those zeroed out, just basically saying, send me to as many chargers as you can. But it's a little bit of a place in their software they could use a little tweaking.
And they've made changes actually just in recent days. They've made updates to it. Yeah, I had my battery degradation to 0. I put 3 minutes as my on and off time because you got to slow down to come off. You've got to come to a stop. You got to plug it in. You have to wait for the app to roll. I put 3 minutes in because I think that was a fair number. And what was it? Maximum state of charge of 80%. So I would leave with 100 if I charged up overnight at the hotel or whatever. But yeah, it was saying charge for 36 minutes, and I'm looking at this, and my total charging times on day 1. So this was Sacramento, Tahoe, Fernley, Battle Mountain, Elko, West Wendover, all sites you're familiar with. And it's 17 minutes, 14 minutes, 33 minutes in Fernley. And again, that was so that we missed Winnemucca. But that's the only time because they were only like 50 miles apart, I think. So that was where that little 3 minute on and off time, that was actually worth missing. And did you stop in Winnemucca?
We did.
Sorry,
But
I
our
apologize.
motivation to stop there was when we were in Fernley, that charger was less than ideal. I don't know if it was our battery wasn't completely warmed up yet, but we weren't getting optimum speed, so we figured we'd try further down the road.
So that's actually interesting because so here's a shared experience. So we were on different sides of that coin, and this speaks to one of the issues. The battery has to get the maximum charge, the battery has to be warm, and the Volkswagen does pre-warm the battery, but it keeps it warm. But I'm also guessing you probably, if you charged up in Tahoe, you probably came in at a high rate of charge because, and I was surprised that this is where my first lesson in the car's efficiency. I charged in Tahoe to 43%, from 8 to 43%. I picked up a friend of mine, Nancy, in Carson City on the way. And even though I had optimized it to come in at 2%, I still came in at 16%. And it was one of the slower charges because it's downhill, but it regened and it wasn't expending. And just as you come down out of the Sierras, the efficiency was, I'm not saying the car's too efficient, but yeah, I didn't get a fast charge out of Fernley because I came in, or the maximum fastness as it were, because I came in with extra charge. Just the car was incredibly efficient there.
Yeah, same for us. We were staying in Tahoe, so we had charged using a Tesla destination charger, and we charged up, I think, to 90% the night before we left, and same scenario.
I'm going to be honest, if you missed Winnemucca, you didn't miss anything. Sorry.
Another Walmart, which I've had this goal of going to all of them since we have Electrify America now.
You need to see, you need help. I need help as well, because I'll be honest with you, they're building a site. I had to be threatened by my co-pilot. I wanted to stop at Lovelock to see if they'd started the construction on one they're building. And she's like, we're trying to get home. It's going to be 2 a.m. You don't need, you don't need. Okay, fine, I'll keep driving. Yeah, she was right. It is but the thing is, neither of us would have been, I mean, we technically could, but it would have been more difficult. The relatively new site at West Wendover is what really made this possible. That had only been in the ground for 2 weeks when I went through, so it must have been a few days less than that for yourself.
Yeah, that one had just worked out for us. And that was another one that we charged up so much, and then we end up with arriving in Salt Lake with more than we needed. But I think that was probably a food stop in there somewhere too. But that charging, I will say, that was a very nice location. That was at a grocery store. It's kind of like a Kroger or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Myths.
Yeah, those are, I like those a lot more than the Walmart, since they have fresh deli and stuff like that. There's a more variety of snacks to get than just being at another Walmart.
You see, I'm a snob, and you won't see this until like episode 6 or 7 of my road trip. So we decided we didn't slow down on the return. We actually charged harder. We not charged harder. I mean, we were charging harder to get home. And we came into Wendover and we needed to get lunch. And it was one of these. I'm a cheese snob. I am. And I had some great cheese, but I really wanted to get some good, and they didn't have prosciutto. It is ridiculous that you're in the middle of the desert, and I'm ridiculous. It's not, I am. And I complained on camera that I could only get dry cured salami and no prosciutto. I'm like, I'm sorry, I think my privilege has gone a little bit too out of control at this point. But
first world problems, we can call it.
But the olive selection was fantastic for the desert. I'm the problem. I get it. No, we both essentially took the Kyle approach on this one to minimize our travel time, charging time by just optimizing, and I was blown away. I mean, we were EV Notify was actually telling us we were 10 minutes ahead of a better route planner is getting the data that I was produced, because tied into it, and they'll reflect that in their data moving forward. But yeah, we were meant to do 36 minutes. You know, I'd actually exported the route plan to an Excel spreadsheet so I could just keep track of it. And it said, yeah, we would do 36 minutes at Battle Mountain. And we were in and out in 25 dead, 24:59. The car was boringly good at performing beyond its expectations. It was just, I asked you about West Wendover. Would you have done the trip if you had had to stop at that very kludgy 50 kilowatt, no app, no support site at the visitor center?
Well, so my wife wanted to go to Tahoe, and I was trying to convince her to let's just go to Park City, Utah, and cut a significant amount of driving off the trip. So I could have probably used that as the hedge to cut quite a few hours off of driving.
I see. You had a backup plan. I see. That when I put an alert in on that site. And by the way, you can do this on PlugShare. You can put alerts on sites that are under construction, so when there's a check-in, you'll know about it. And sure enough, I was tracking that West Wendover site, and I was so glad. And that's one of the newer, not just newer charging sites, but those newer chargers I found. I think those are they're not the Signets. I forgot the ones with the black.
ABBs, I believe, right?
But they're the newer ABBs.
Correct. Yep. They were very nice units. Yeah.
Those were
the screens work.
Right. Now hold on. So you went through Grand Island, Nebraska?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. That was those I've mentioned in my video. Those have taken a beating. I mean, those screens are just getting the sun on them. You can see where they've applied multiple protective coats of lacquer or whatever, and they're just being destroyed by the sun. It's it's noticeable. I did like when I saw those sites when I saw those chargers at at various sites. I had a degree of confidence. It was like this. I'm not going to have to find a different charger. I won't even have to change charging station. These ones will work. So you drove all the way there. You drove back through Tahoe. You might not be able to answer this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. How much of this was your idea, and how much of this was the wife's idea, and how much did she support this lunacy?
She supported the lunacy, I think, mainly because there was her destinations of Vegas and Tahoe. So I think it was kind of like okay, we can go there, but we have to do this science project along the way. And the funny thing is, when we came back, we both said we would do it again. We would definitely take the electric car. We were happy we did it. I will say, if you tune into our first episode, the very first charger we went to had nightmare of issues that nothing was working, and we were on the phone with Electrify America since they were choosing to do updates on Memorial Day weekend, which doesn't necessarily seem like a logical time to plan service, but no. We were pretty close to just wanting to turn around and get the Kia and drive on the trip. And after getting through that first charger, we're pretty glad we stuck through it, because then it just started getting better as we went.
That I wasn't affected by that, but they did it last year as well on I-95 all the way down the East Coast. On a holiday weekend, they took almost all the chargers out of commission to do software updates. I'm like, America is famous for traveling on holiday weekends. It's like a sport. Like, I want to watch the Cowboys and I want to breathe reconditioned air in a tin tube, or I want to spend the weekend drinking Flying J coffee. That's what you people do. That's how you celebrate your differences from the British. We can drive end to end in a couple of hours. We don't technically need gas stations, I suppose. But you guys make a sport out of it. It amazed me that they did that again. I digress. So it all worked out. How did you feel about the car? at the end of the trip?
We liked it more at the end than we did in the beginning. I mean, in the beginning, we were like, okay, it's a pretty good car. The performance isn't as great as some other EVs out there. But we knew based on reviews we had seen that it was going to probably be a little more comfortable than the other options out there. And compared to our Kia, it was just miles of an upgrade that it's so quiet. You can hear a pin drop in there cruising down the highway, and it eats up the miles pretty impressively, way better than I thought it would. The efficiency could be a little better, but I think that also a lot of that has to do with the beefy tires that Volkswagen chose to put on it. Definitely eats up some efficiency.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think they needed to go to the extremes of the BMW i3 and the pizza cutters that I used to have on that thing. But I do doubt that we need 65s, I think it is, on the back.
It's a little excessive. Yeah.
A little. Looks great. And there's 20 inches. Like I said, there's part of me would like to put the 19s on it for efficiency, but I'm not road tripping every single day. So it charges so fast. So here, let me ask you a question. We are told that we're likely to see 150 to 170 kilowatt charging in the first big over-the-air update. Is that going to make a meaningful difference to you?
It depends on for how long it implements that speed. Because if they increase the peak speed, but then they have to cut into the rest of the curve to accommodate it, I'm not sure how much it'll accomplish. I mean, it'll be a welcome addition for sure. I mean, a few minutes at every stop adds up quick. But I mean, the thing we noticed on our trip is we downloaded a bunch of Netflix shows and stuff, since everyone in the Tesla always brags that they watch Netflix all the time when they're charging. So we prepared for it with our iPad, and we never watched a single episode of anything because we got to a charge, and by the time whether it was a food stop or just a cup of coffee in a restroom, it was time to go as fast as we were there.
I've joked about this many times in my videos that quite often the issue is battery versus bladder, and bladder has won more times than the battery has. Even when I drove up to Anderson, this is where I get my 232 miles at 70 miles an hour. I did that consistently, but I got to the 3-hour mark. I had to pull off the road. I had to, and not only that, but the dog had to as well. We ended up both peeing on the same tree because of COVID. We couldn't use the restrooms. But the human being is now my wife, as I understand it genetically, she's part camel. She could do the forget California border. She could do the Canadian to Mexico borders, I swear, without stopping. But I'm made of weaker stuff. Our trip was slightly, we did the same as you. Mine was an obsessive, forget science experiment. I'd already done the experiment with the Tesla going to Cheyenne and back in 3 days. I'd already tested my metal against the EV. This time round, though, we had to get to Chicago in 3 days, from 5 a.m. Monday morning when I left here to getting in before 10 o'clock at night on Wednesday, and that without driving through the night, which my 45-year-old soft-celled self just can't do anymore. There'd have to be an actual emergency. I needed the 4.5, 5, 6 hours of sleep that we managed to get, and charging, which was nice, at the hotels we stopped at. Many hotel owners are wondering this, and wondering how you can attract, medium to high net worth individuals. Put a 30-amp charger outside. It's amazing how far we'll detour to charge the batteries while we charge our own. It makes a difference. And
at a minimum, if you don't want to spend a fortune on a charge point install, just put a 1450 plug.
Yeah. Absolutely. So you have a 30-40 amp mobile charger?
We tested one. We were unhappy with it, so we will be getting another one here in the next month or so. We just haven't picked which unit we want to go with.
This wasn't the point of this particular video, but I'm going to campaign right now on your behalf. You have a Tesla adapt charger already, correct?
Yep.
So do what I did. I have a Tesla mobile charger.
That is on our list. That's what we are considering getting. Yeah.
It's less than $300. It's the cheapest 40-50 amp package that there is, and the thing is battle tested. Such a compact unit as well relative to all the other ones on the market. It's now, just anyone else watching, if you don't have the Tesla adapt, it's not worth it. But if you already have the Tesla adapt, it's absolutely worth it. And if you don't have a Tesla adapt, you have to wonder why you bought the vehicle, because there's so many Tesla destination chargers at hotels and restaurants and other locations. You cannot charge a supercharger with it. And
if you want a Tesla adapter, click at the link down below.
You see, I had my privileges taken away from me by Amazon Stripe because I don't have enough followers, and so they closed my account after I'd sold 20 of them.
That's not an Amazon link. I'm an affiliate with Tesla Tap.
Click on his link.
And a quick 10 seconds on that. There is one on Amazon you can get, but it's only rated to 40 amps as far as I know, which I believe
they used to have both, but then they've been, I think just supply issues meant that they don't always have them both up.
Okay.
We should explain. There's a 40 amp and a 60 amp one.
Right.
And and technically the 41 should be fine because the car shouldn't take more than that, but there's a gray bit in the middle, and so if you don't want to put in jeopardy your $40,000 vehicle, spend the extra $30. I think that's the takeaway.
Yeah, it's a small price for a lot of security.
Yeah, so yeah, click on his link and buy one, and it's the smallest, most compact, most beautifully machined. This wasn't meant to be a sales pitch, but I'm an engineer, and these things are so beautifully constructed. I mean, it's a dense. If you need to kill a guy in a desert, the Tesla Adapt is the perfect. Too weird. All right, fair enough. Did they leave any fingerprints? No, but it looks like they were beaten to death with a Tesla. Wow, could have been anyone.
Left the emblem right there.
Exactly. No, it's the mobile charger. Yeah, the only annoying thing with the mobile charger is if you buy the full pack of cables, which I did because we tend to charge up at fairgrounds. We're not carnies, just dog show people. Yeah, all the adapters were expensive, but in my particular use case, it was a price worth paying. But my use case is not anyone else's. So you drove all the way there. You drove all the way back. Apart from the Nevada bit, was there a point when you were worried you might run out of, that you might run out of ions, that you might have to throw some Duracells in or push?
I mean, not really, because the simple math with an electric car is if you're going to run out at 75 miles an hour, slow down to 70 or slow down to 65, and it's a pretty simple. You'll get so much more range at the slower speed. You'll make your destination with leaps to spare.
I'll disagree with you slightly on that, but only because I'm a moron and chose to draft a semi for 60 odd miles. But that's not what you should do. That's not a good idea. We were already facing getting into Lexington, Nebraska. I think it was 3 in the morning. If we slowed down, it would be 3, and if we didn't slow down, it would be 1:30. And I just thought, bugger it. If we have to, we'll draft, and if we absolutely have to, we made it in with a few percent. But it was a click here and watch it. It's amusing, but not something you should do. Although, and I will say this, interestingly, we used that strategy the next day to put a really long stretch in out of the hotel with 100%. And we drafted all morning the next day and we put in 240 miles and came in, and I'm looking at the numbers now, with 15% to spare. We actually overdid it. That was fantastic. Actually, that brings me. Let me make this my last question for you. How did you find travel assist?
I think it's the third best electric vehicle autopilot type software.
So the best is?
I think autopilot still is the best, although I have not driven Tesla autopilot since they've taken the radar out, so I can't speak for that. And then when I had test driven the Mustang, I was very impressed by their self-steering software. The thing I didn't like about Travel Assist is anytime a truck came anywhere near its lane, the car was freaking out about it. Whereas in a Tesla, I've been in a Tesla and passed a semi, and the car will just move over a little bit and complete the pass rather than panic braking.
Yeah, we sometimes refer to her as Karen. She did have her moments where it would just, and then it would start violently shaking and putting on the red lights and braking, and you're just like, why? What do you know that I don't? Did that tumbleweed look at you funny? She had her moments. She really did. Hey, this has been. We should draw this to a close. I think it's fair to say we both had reasonable expectations, but they were exceeded.
Yeah, I would agree.
The car charges quicker than they say it does. They've underplayed their hand on the charging curve, and so it'd be nice to see that expanded. The sat nav sucks. I was using
the infotainment as a whole.
It is, yeah, it's lacking. It needs a lot of software updates. And you would do it again?
Absolutely, we will do it again.
I think that's a good place for us to end. I think next time, I'll tell you what, how about next time we both deep dive on the charging experience? You touched on briefly having to call Electrify America. I did it a couple of times. Let's talk about the situations where we had a less than positive. Let's make sure we balance it. So best and less than charging experiences on 12,000 miles of travel. Let's make that the next video we do.
Sounds pretty good. There's a lot to talk about in that category.
All right. So make sure you like and subscribe, both of us, for our forthcoming 6-hour special. It's more torture than David Blaine. Actually, that's not true. EA did a good job, but we'll get to the moments. I've been regular EV Dad.
I'm Joe from JK EV.
And we'll see you next time. Subscribe, like, comment, ask questions. We will come back to you.
Bye-bye.